everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Brawley City Council, successor agency to Brawley, special meeting agenda. If we can get the roll call, please.
The minutes will reflect all council members present.
Very good. And if we can stand up for the invocation, I'll lean on Councilmember Hamby. All right. Do the honors.
Okay, let's pray. Almighty God, Heavenly Father, we are grateful to you tonight again for this opportunity to gather together and serve our community. We are thankful for each member of our community, and especially as the weather breaks and we see more people out and about. We are thankful for the sense of community that we have here. Lord, we ask that you would watch over and protect our city and those who serve it. We ask that you would guide us this evening with wisdom. And I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, I'll go ahead and lead us for a change here. Put your hand over your heart and everyone face the flag and ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Hamby.
You're welcome. Very nice.
And we'll go to our first item, which will be the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll go to our first item of public appearances and comments. This will be the portion of the meeting that does not exceed 4 minutes and is the time for the public to address the council on any items that are not appearing on the agenda and is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor will recognize you when you come to the microphone, so please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please direct your questions and comments to the city council. And I'd like to begin, if we could, the top of our meeting here. It's kind of an exciting occasion. So 1A is the recognition of the retiring of Community Service Officer Angelica, best known as Chela Garcia, by our police chief. And if I can have our police chief step forward.
I just got out of jail.
She's checking the bucket list.
Good.
Just kidding.
I'm not really out of there.
We got her on work furlough. So Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Robert Sawyer, Police Chief. It is both a pleasurable and sad moment at the same time that we appear before you today to announce, as you mentioned, Chela's retirement. Chela was a fixture of the Brawley Police Department for some 19 years. I still hear her yelling, "Get out of my way," coming through in the hallways. But in my short time there, she was a pleasure to deal with day in and day out. By far one of the better members of the police department, our most well-known members of the police department, I would say, in our community. There was not a day that went by, whether she was working the front counter or working evidence or passing by the front counter, that somebody did not flag her down, to recognize her, to speak to her, to acknowledge her presence, to ask her a question, ask her guidance. She really did offer a lot to the city of Brawley. And it is truly a loss for our Brawley family and for the law enforcement family here to have her go. But at the same time, it's a very proud moment that we can honor an individual who has dedicated their better part of their life to public service. And that is exactly what Chela did. She did it with a smile on her face most days. She brought a really high level of work ethic to the department, and something that I hope we can all strive to match. When I say that I still hear the echoing of "move, get out of my way," I mean that in the kindest way possible, because she was on a mission. Day in and day out, she had a job to do. She was focused from the time that she got there and until the time that I had to grab her by her collar and throw out at the end of the night. I very rarely have I come across an employee who's as dedicated as Chela was. So in recognition of her service, the Brawley Police Department has prepared a plaque that I'd like to read here with your permission in honor of Angelica Garcia. So it reads, Brawley Police Department, Angelica Chela Garcia, March 2000 to October 2019. In honor of a dear friend and colleague, thank you for your 19 years of loyal and dedicated service. Your commitment to delivering excellent customer service is second to none. You have left an excellent impression with your coworkers for your outstanding work ethic. Here's to your impressive career. And it has her name at the top, her badge and her badge number in the middle, and at the bottom it's inscribed, a time to look back with admiration, a time to look forward with anticipation. And if you know anything about Chella, you'll know that aside from feeding her lions, which I tease her about all the time out in front of her house, she has plenty of projects in mind, and she certainly has a lot to look forward to in anticipation. So Chella, thank you very much for everything that you've done for the citizens of Brawley, for the Brawley Police Department, for the Fire Department, all the other city departments here. I know that I can speak for each of them when I say that you're going to be sorely missed, and your time here was really treasured by all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody being there for me. It was my pleasure to be there at the police department for so many years. I missed you guys. It's been 2 weeks, and I always tell my daughter I miss the guys, the girls too. But the guys, I would hang out with the guys more. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you. I'll come and visit.
And Chella, we're going
I think council may have a few words.
Chella, if we could, I think in this special occasion, and we certainly want to be able to get a chance to come up and take a picture, and hopefully for you and your family that you realize that we recognize everything from promotions from within to new positions, new employees, etc. But something like this, when a career like this, distinguished service, especially at the highest level with our police department, I think that resonates at just a little bit different level with the community. Because I always say this: if we're not safe, nothing else really matters to a community, certainly like Brawley. So thank you for your service from the bottom of our hearts. And I also want to state that in the past couple years, no secret, I've been running around the neighborhood quite a bit. And I run by your home actually quite a bit. So I can only imagine how much more immaculate that yard is going to look with your time now. And may check in to see if you can help me with some landscaping ideas. So, but just truly, I want to turn it over to council because I know that there's a lot of comments that I know will be special, near and dear for you and your family. But thank you for your service.
Chella, congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for your years of service. And we're sorry to lose you and your work ethic. And I know with each generation that works and then retires, we lose history, we lose that work ethic that each generation seems to have that lessens with the next generation. But thank you for your service. Thank you for demonstrating as an example that work ethic for the next generation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. If I had advice as a retiree, stay busy and come visit because you'll miss the people. That's the big thing. And I think it's important that you come back and visit, stay busy, do the projects. I know you will be out there. I know Brawley is important to you. And so just continue doing what you enjoy doing and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Well, Chella, really thank you for the years of service that you've put into our community. I know you work very hard. One thing that Chief said, he pointed out your work ethic, and that has been evident to me for years and years and years, not just here in the city of Brawley, but the work that you do outside by your home. In fact, I think it was yesterday that I saw you helping your neighbor clean up. And so it's just the type of person that you are, that you commit to helping others, and that's what you've done for the city of Brawley. I hope that you get to enjoy your retirement and really get to enjoy every single day aside from work. I mean, work is where we spend most of our lives, right? While we're awake.
Yeah,
But now you have an opportunity to really take advantage of your day and make the things happen that you've been wanting to work on for so long. But I do appreciate you very, very much. I thank you for everything you've done for the city and for what you're doing for your community. Because like I mentioned, I saw you helping your neighbors, and so that's
Always
just,
helping.
and that's who you are. And so
Yeah.
thank you for that. Congratulations. Enjoy your retirement, and thank you again for everything that you've done for us.
Thank you.
Chela, congratulations.
Thank you.
I was actually kind of surprised to hear that you were retiring. I expected you to be here longer for some reason.
They didn't believe me.
They didn't believe you.
But I heard nothing but good things about you all the time and about your work from the chief and your coworkers, the police officers, and from community members. And as you know, I've been around you in the community at parties and things like that, and you are, she's a lot of fun. She really is. So, you know, I know that you enjoy life. You
Living my life.
you enjoyed your job, and you did the best you could, and we appreciate that so much. But I know that you're one of those people that really, truly enjoys life. So I don't think you're going to have any problem being retired. But if you do have a problem being retired and you want to help out, let us know. I think we could find some community projects for you easily.
Well, I'm trying to open my own little business.
Oh, okay.
The mobile car wash.
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool.
So I'm working on getting my license and everything.
Oh, very
Cool.
good,
Very
very
nice.
I
good.
love to detail cars.
Yeah.
See,
So-
we didn't know you had that talent. We didn't-
I love the details.
Cars and-
I didn't know you had that talent also.
Yeah.
But congratulations, and I'm happy to hear that you already have something in mind, because that makes a big difference when people retire, because it's such a big change in your life. And so if you already have something in mind, that's going to work wonders for you. Okay, congratulations again. I look forward to seeing you out there.
We do have a gift that the council would like to present to you, Chela, if we may. Let's see.
And council, maybe as we present this, if we can
Go down.
head down there and get a picture.
Rosanna, do you have some remarks?
Rosanna, did you want to go?
If you'd like to give me some time, I'd be
Sure.
happy to. So one of the things that I find so extraordinary about Chela is whether she's inside of the police department, out in the neighborhood, or at the courthouse, you can feel her energy from blocks away. I've had many encounters with Chela outside of our traditional confines of the workplace, and I think the energy and zest for life that she brings to all that she takes on is a great lesson for all of us to do the work we love. Because when you do the work you love, it shows. You will be sorely missed, Chela. I know it's not the end, it's a new beginning for you. And I know you serve as an inspiration to many of us, that the excitement and enthusiasm that can be part of every working day, no matter how challenging it is, you can change the direction of what the end of a day feels like after a very, very long day of work. When there are people like you side by side with team members, it makes all the difference in the world. So thank you so much for your contributions to the city of Brawley. We're so lucky to have had you for the time that we have, and I know this isn't the end. It is a new beginning, and I look forward to crossing paths with you again. Thank you for your service.
There's a lot of dust in there.
Yeah. Alma, you'll be the official photographer.
Yeah, turn it up. Hold this for a moment.
Wow, I feel
You are special. Maybe they want with the police department?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys want to come up?
You want to take a picture up here in the
with everybody
front?
up front? Come on. Come on. Yeah, we can.
Go back up. You, all of us? Get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Don't be photo bombers.
I know.
These guys are big up blocks.
They should, yeah, we should have my right.
Hope we can get everybody in there. Shirley can't do fiction. Shirley can't do fiction.
Wow.
That's cold, man. That's cold. Shirley can't do fiction. Well, Mike's trying to get rid of it right now. I don't know.
Want me to take the picture? I'll
Yeah,
take
go ahead, get on that.
Want me to take,
I don't want to get in this.
Yeah.
I don't want to photobomb everything.
Mike's taking pictures of himself on that one. I think.
Yes. It's like- That's cool. There you go.
All right.
Step out.
Very nice.
Perfect.
That's a good one. Okay.
That's a framer.
Yeah, it is.
One more.
Yeah. That's a rare, yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
Of course. That's the most
Absolutely.
important one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, now, one more.
Okay.
Never been famous.
Oh, no.
Never been famous.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
I want another party like that, another opportunity.
Chella, that's it. We're going to adjourn the meeting. That's all we're just here for.
We're gonna start
Nothing else.
charging.
Well, very good, and appreciate it. Just such a great thing to see the whole Brawley family come together. So, thank you again, Chella, for your service. Absolutely. I believe we're still in the public comments, so if there's anybody left in the room that'd like to come up and make a public comment, feel free. This is the time to do so. And I don't see anybody leaping, so we're going to move to the next item. We'll move to the next item, which will be consent agenda. These items are approved in one motion. Council members and members of the public may request consent items to be considered separately as a time determined by the mayor. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move to regular business. And what we'll do is maybe before we go to regular business, I don't know, for any staff members or members of the public that want to remain, feel free to absolutely do so. But if anyone at this time do need to go, feel free to do so as well. So we'll move to our next item, which is regular business. And this will be next steps for the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. And I believe with our finance director, or
We'll
gonna
be
giving the
actually
presentation?
together making a presentation. We have
Okay.
about 8 slides, pretty limited, high level. Would like to kind of update you on where we stand with the budget process.
Very good.
I'm going to join him down below.
Thank you.
Is it gonna be here or up here?
It will be up here.
Okay.
I don't think that one's working.
Excuse me.
It's gotta be bigger.
Okay, get it queued up. Let's see it. So the intent of today's presentation is to kind of bring you up to speed on where we left off with the budget process and where we need to get between now and November 19th. We're planning to present the final budget for adoption on November 19th. It'll include all funds at that time, but having the opportunity this evening to just slow the process for a moment to do a check-in with you is the intent. And we are specifically focused on the general fund because of its historic distressed nature. So with that, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free to stop. Both Tyler and I are prepared to receive input or respond to questions as they arise. So where are we in the sequence? It probably seems that we are significantly delayed, which is in fact an accurate statement. The collective bargaining process over the last several months didn't conclude by June 30th, and as a result of that, a lot of the subsequent data preparation that's necessary to get to an approved budget, it was difficult to properly estimate the values that were going to be involved in each of those MOUs and in each of the compensation approaches to all of our employee groups. So at this point, we're happy to report that collective bargaining has concluded for this fiscal process. And as you know from the last City Council meeting, we also were happy to have reached the milestone of the completed audit for 17-18. So now we've got a very clear sense of where we were at June 30, 2018. And we find ourselves at month 5 of 12 in a fiscal year. Typically, we have a budget ready for action in the last quarter of a fiscal year, typically in the June window. But here we are in November, month 5 of a 12-month cycle in the fiscal year. So we are most definitely in need of moving forward with the next step. And with some of our variables very clearly established, we are well positioned to move forward with our eyes open as to where we stand financially. So per the audit that was accepted at the last meeting, the general fund reserve unrestricted balance as of June 30 is $671,000 roughly, $672 in total. And when we look at where we closed out the books through June 30, 2019, the last fiscal year, per year-end closing, we're at $689,588. So this is a very important figure to keep in mind as we look at our starting point for an adopted budget, because this method of bridging the difference between revenues and expenditures, that option has been severely diminished as a result of some of the patchwork that we have undertaken as a city to keep service levels as high as possible for the community Brawley serves. So where do we stand today? That question can be answered with a series of meetings have occurred with all of our city departments. Those are done on a one-on-one basis between myself and our finance director and the department heads. We've held a series of public meetings, both strategic planning and general fund specific. Those have already occurred. And we have prepared a set of projected expenditures based on the 3-year look-back period that's necessary for the San Gabriel decision. So as you know, we have implemented changes to address the cash in lieu of benefit, but we still had the cleanup that was necessary to address the look-back period. And so the current budget as prepared assumes that the following payouts are going to occur. These don't assume any additional liquidated damages. This is simply the city's calculations and estimates for actual overtime accrued. So where that leaves us is funds set aside to address PD, fire, parks and recreation, and all of the remaining groups beyond that. And we have greater detail to kind of walk you through what those specific values are, but we thought it was important to let you know that those estimates are the ones that are currently in our spreadsheets. So they are the assumptions in the working draft. And as you also are aware, we are in the process of working our way through 2 pieces of litigation. And those matters have to do with the Flores versus San Gabriel decision. And at this time, the $100,000 set aside that typically exists for legal fees, special issues that might arise in a fiscal year, we annually set aside $100,000 for legal fees built inside of the professional fees line item of personnel. And we are already at that $100,000 value in the month of November. So we know that while that estimate has been something we've been using in past years to chart expenditures, anything beyond that is going to increase the gap that has been identified. So Tyler is going to walk you through some additional detail, but I think probably the most important point to drive home this evening is to let you know that the current gap that we have identified in the general fund is $1.3 million. And that is assuming exactly these features above, and also is a pretty significant task that has to be undertaken between now and November 19th to figure out how we're going to keep the ship sailing and live within our financial means without a reserve to depend on. So with that, I will hand over to Tyler.
So a little bit of expanding maybe a bit on what's not in the budget as to date. In relations to San Gabriel, what's not in there is any Teamsters amounts and any potentially legal fees that would be generated from the two, as Rosanna said. And especially the legal fees, those could be hefty, depending on how it comes out there. So current gap is 1.295, 1.3 million. So I've been here probably, I think it's been about 7 months now. When I first came in, I was concentrating on the audit and some department challenges and the budget itself for this fiscal year. And it wasn't until recently that I started to take a look at the past years and see maybe what was going on and what we had. So do I just click on this? Okay, so this slide, hopefully you can see it. This slide is the general fund year-over-year revenue and expenditures. The blue line are the revenues, and that, I think it's an orange line, are the expenditures. As you can see, in 2013, the revenues exceeded expenditures. 14 it did, and at 15 you can see is where we started to cross over. The city did into a deficit balance where expenditures or revenues did not support expenditures. What I found interesting looking at it is while I'm doing the budget, I don't have all the historical experience that some of the other people here have, and what really went on and what have occurred in all these years. And so I was concerned. I still am concerned. But when I said $1.3 million, why, how? It wasn't. I was not sure if all my assumptions or all my estimations were exactly accurate. But when I took a look at this, as you can see from what is that? 16 through 18. 16 through 18, expenditures for the most part have flattened out, and to a certain extent the revenues, and what you have there, that gap between them is about depending on the year, anywhere from 1.3 million, 1.37 to 1.46 million. The average for those 3 years is 1.38. So the budgeted gap in this year's budget is in line with historical data. I think that's important. This is the course that we've been on for the past 3 years, and there hasn't been a lot of difference. If you look 17, 18, and even 19. 19 figures aren't up there, but I've been taking a look at the expenditures for the general fund. Expenditures from 18 to 19, it only increased about $284,000 year over year from 18 to 19. That is only a 1.88% increase. I mean, that's basically hardly even inflation. And that when you consider that merits have been going on, cost of living, on everything else, like for example, utilities, supplies, everything keeps going up. So the city has been holding its ground through other means, trying to cut back where they can. So that's that slide. Here is the general fund balance over a time period of the 2012 to 2018. The blue line is the actual fund balance, unrestricted, per the audited financial statements. The orange line is the minimum fund reserve per the policy set by the board, I think, 2012, somewhere along the lines, which is it's 15%, it's not about, it's exactly 15% of the annual expenditures is where the council wants the reserves. That's that semi-flat line. As you can see, it correlates between 15, 16, 17, 18 with the prior slide. You can see how the reserves just they start falling off. And it's that year-over-year gap of 1.3, 1.4 million dollars that for the last 3 years running, and this would be the fourth, that has really eaten into the reserves. Observations from my perspective as the new person on the block here. Service levels are not sustainable at these current levels with revenues not meeting expenditures. We have to make some hard choices moving forward. None of them are easy, believe me. This is where we're at. I think that's all I have for the moment. Strategies and solutions.
So I want to wrap up with a couple of maybe items that are food for thought and give the council maybe a chance to digest a little bit of the content that's been shared, building on the discussions that have occurred prior to today. We are in the process of finalizing a budget for action before the council. Our best efforts are oriented towards revenue-generating commercial development. We continue to be committed to efficient and effective turnaround of projects to get the feedback to developers that they need. We are looking to accomplish revenue and expenditure alignment. The struggle isn't new, but it's perhaps more pressing than it ever has been because of the depletion of the reserve. We are looking to further lean the organization, recognizing that we've undertaken a pretty significant task to keep service levels where we have with the limited resources available. And in doing so, we relied on the general fund reserve to make that possible. But since those dollars aren't going to be available into the future, it isn't a strategy that can continue to be employed. We will be looking to adjust service levels that reflect the actual staffing that's in place, which means a reduction. And we hope to come to the council with a 5-year plan on how we can rebuild the general fund reserve over a 5-year timetable. And in terms of next steps, we'll be working at the department level to identify the specific service level reductions. I want to also note the teams citywide have been working on various cost recovery strategies. We've made significant progress on that front in the last several months to address fire-related calls, PD-related calls, and various services attached to Parks and Recreation. We will be looking very rapidly to reduce temporary staffing in code enforcement, graffiti abatement, and Parks and Recreation. As you may recall, these very specific positions, when they were first approved, they were really a stopgap. The intention was do whatever possible to see if we could experience a financial recovery that could support permanent staffing into the future. The numbers, unfortunately, don't support the addition of permanent staffing roles. We are still delayed with the permanent staffing of Fire Station Number 2, in addition to all these other quality of life areas that code enforcement, graffiti abatement, and Parks and Recreation encompass. We also aim to come back at the next meeting. The council has considered the use of relinquishment funds for their assigned proportional purpose, i.e. the $9 million set aside for North 8th Street, Old Highway 111, and Main Street between Brawley Avenue and 8th. It has been placed in an account and is accumulating interest. The discussions before this body have been centered on those funds being dedicated to future improvements that are consistent with the area of relinquishment. If the council would like us to take a closer look at the interest earnings on either of those segments or both of them in total, that maybe is a way to help this fiscal year. But as we look at, for instance, eliminating temporary staffing, eliminating permanent vacant roles, all those things, they aren't enough to bridge the 1.3 gap. So we know, given where we stand in the calendar year relative to midpoint, those types of changes are only going to have an impact on a 6 or 7 month time horizon. And getting to a point that we're living with the operational revenues and rebuilding the reserve is going to require further belt tightening. That's going to be difficult for the community to understand, and for service level changes to be rolled out in a way that's embraced positively. So with that. We are happy to take questions and additional input from the council. If there is none at this time, we're certainly prepared to work with you over the next 2 weeks before next council meeting to continue to close the gap.
Questions?
I guess I have some questions. I don't know. The potential interest earnings on our relinquishment funds, how much does that usually entail, an estimate? And I don't expect you to give me an exact figure, but...
It's not, if I could start, as far as she said, it's in a fund. It's pooled accounts with LAIF and MBS, et cetera. I present on that spreadsheet that we quarterly on the investment. So it's a pooled amount. So we do an interest allocation on an annual, monthly, we're going to get to monthly basis. Since 2012, so 7/1/2012 to now, well, actually to 2018, it's probably been within that streets fund where that money since about $405,000 roughly, and probably an additional for 19, 40,000, give or take. So that'd be the interest. Now, as Rosanna said, we're kind of at a disadvantage being how late we are on this process, and there's only 6 months, so it's going to be a challenge to close anything this period, this fiscal year. However, with any type of, and I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure everybody understands, but with every time we loan from one fund to the other, we're giving up opportunity costs. That money's gone, it can't be used for something. And the auditors, they want it documented, they want interest, they want it paid back. Yes, you're paying yourself, but it's still hard to come back from that, but just be aware of that.
Okay.
If I could, just a couple things, and I know that, again, there needs to be some time here, and I know as council, we can individually engage and get some of our own questions. I'm sure some of which will be formulated after, but again, appreciate the update and the overview. I think we were well aware that the challenges we were facing, and just looking at it this kind of with some of the graphics you shared, Tyler, if we could just, I noticed, so we've been relatively flat both on expenditure as well as revenues, relatively, but I noticed, again, maybe an ever so slight increase in revenues, which I think has kind of been the history of Brawley anyways. We've looked at how our tax revenues and including county tax have had a certain percentage of growth year after year. And then what I'm just wondering is just with what you have learned, maybe with what staff knows between all department heads, if we close the gap, are the expenditure, because some of the things I've witnessed and experienced being on council the last few years is we've had some precipitous rises in the cost to do business, everything from pension liability, employment costs, up to and including the challenges, I think that was outlined going through our collective bargaining process, and then more so even the litigation costs and all those, which many are unexpected. As much as those might seem like one-time money, it seems like if it's continuously occurring, you almost have to bake it into the budget, unfortunately, as we shared a pretty modest amount up there. And then the other is, I want to go back to 2015. I noticed something like the Affordable Care Act. I know that going back a number of years, and I think it was around 2015-ish when we saw the sharp increase in the cost of doing business. And if I can remember a rough round number at that time, without any change in service level or employees, the cost of doing business just to provide health care, for example, and to make it affordable, cost the city over $300,000 a year. So those are direct bites out of the general fund. Mm-hmm. And so that's ongoing. That's not once a year. That's not one time money. That's year after year. And I don't think those costs have gone down. So when you start to accumulate these costs, these sharp rises, I think what would be helpful, both for information for council and the public, is to understand that gap. In large buckets, not in huge detail, but just as I'm outlining: pension, liability, and costs. Affordable Care Act, for example, if that was one example, and these are what I call they're largely become unfunded mandates, things that we have to do in order to comply. But nothing changes. We're not adding to staff. We're not providing new service lines. We're not, we're not increasing, which is certainly, ultimately what council and city staff would like to do. So, I think to understand those things will be pretty important of what the drivers of the gap is. But as important for decision making, I think looking out that if we work our tails off here in closing that gap, how do revenues and expenditures look? However flat they are, what can we expect moving forward based on history? I mean, I know a lot of it's just going to be looking at the historicals and how we've trended. So,
just a couple items to add to it as a part of those discussion points. We paid $1 million Regional Water Quality Control Board settlement. Yep. In this period, referenced in the graph, and we also experienced projects, long overdue, deferred maintenance projects. We completed, we actually started to dig to be ready for today's discussion points. We did 2 significant parking lot improvement projects, also using general fund dollars, and we did the bleacher replacement project. All of those were 6-figure projects, but reduced risk in deteriorated properties. So that was senior center parking lot and the fire station number 1 parking lots, and those were big numbers.
Those are big numbers, and I think as council and the public, we can as we came across those must do's, have do's. I think we understand that, and also taking advantage of grant monies and matching, local matches, etc. But pension costs, you did mention regional water. I did have that down in my notes. I just want everyone to understand what even the reserve fund would look like, or the general fund, if there's an extra $1 million sitting in it. I mean, it doesn't change some of the work that we have to do, but none of this is by design. I think it, to make anyone feel better, as much as to better understand how we got here, where we're going, so that we can, obviously, as we're looking to make some decisions here, and we do pass this final budget. And I think, to Tyler's point, this is not the end, it's the beginning. This is going to be an ongoing process, but I think if we're smart about it, we can get to the end goal, which is keeping the city healthy and still being able to provide an expected level of service. And I think some of this also, we're going to have to push ourselves to be creative wherever we can, which I think we have been. That's what's gotten us to here, but to continue to do that. And so, anyways, I'm done. Those are just my outlines for.
Just I think we have been. I think we've done a good job as far as looking at ways to bring in more revenues. This past year, we've been moving forward on that. I do have a question in regards to, and it's on our sheet up here. A big thing that happened to the city this year, of course, was that Flores versus San Gabriel case, which cost us a lot of money. But are we, or will you be doing some kind of an analysis since we decided to go ahead and terminate that cash in lieu of program? When we can see the impact of that change and how that's going to impact our budget, because I think that probably is something that we really need to consider for future.
So there's two parts to that topic. The first part is addressing the city's obligation for back wages, and those are the dollars represented. I want to clarify a point Tyler made with reference to Teamsters represented employees. What these slides are focused on is the general fund. There are actually a few Teamsters employees that are general fund supported. This does not represent, however, the numbers associated with special or enterprise funds, which are Teamsters represented, the bulk of our Teamsters represented employees. So separate numbers. What we were trying to hone in on in this slide is sharing with you how we built the budget. It's based on 3 years of back wages. And for those who we have reached agreement with, which is all but 2, have been resolved, we use the actual numbers. For those that remain and are the subject of ongoing litigation, the numbers used were only the back wages amount, not any escalator for liquidated damages. So want to be sure that I properly represent that. With reference to how the budget sheets were prepared by cost center, so for our general fund supported employees, that line item that has to do with health insurance that was previously populated with data that had a blending of premiums for people in the city CalPERS medical program and the cash allowance.
Right.
The cash allowance amount no longer included, but what is included is 75-25 as a benefit to all of our employees. And I worked closely with Tyler to develop a reasonable projection of how many people would come back onto the city plan.
Okay.
And I believe our number was 50%, assuming 50% would jump back onto the plan and 50% would opt to stay with their outside health coverage. And so that's already in the budget. The 75-25 benefit, depending on the type of employee and their household structure, 75-25 may result in a more expensive or costly medical benefit than the cash allowance without the overtime calculations associated.
That may do.
So all those adjustments have already been built into the revenue and expenditure projections, and they got us to this 1.3 number.
All right, thank you.
Can we go to the first general fund slide, the first?
You mean
That one. Yeah, I'm interested in, and maybe with time we can get an answer to that, but what I'm interested in is we had $15 million in revenues coming in, and then suddenly we dropped down to in the neighborhood of 14 million in the between the 2014 and 2015 timeframe. Okay, but we go up in expenditures another $1 million during the next year of the 2015 to 2016. What I would like to know is what happened there. And not necessarily in every little detail, but just what happened, because it appears that we're moving along, and certainly our expenditures dropped down, but it looks like our revenue, our revenue dropped down, but it looks like our expenditures then correspondingly jumped back up. And so what I would like to see is what happened, because that looks like an anomaly to me. And so I'm always interested in anomalies and why those things happen.
I could speak to the difference between 15 and 16 on an audited higher level and bigger buckets. And at this point, I don't have the details of what those numbers are, but 755,000 of the increase year over year was in the public safety bucket, which includes everything in public safety, all expenditures.
Okay.
As Rosanna said, there was another 200,000 plus of capital expenditures year over year increase. And then the other funds, the general had like 40 to 50, the smaller ones.
And I'm assuming that the drop in revenue might be related to the beef plant? Yes. Is that basically what we're dealing with? Okay, okay. So we had some expenditure, we had some expenditures that rose up, okay, like $900,000. So I think we need to take a look at that and what that really comprised, because that might be indicative of what we have to look at in terms of cutting back in those areas. So I think that's what we have to look at. At least that's what I have to look at from my perspective. History teaches me some things, and so when I look at that, the historical data on that, because it's almost too wide of a gap for me to really look at. It's almost like yeah, I can see it going up some, and then we move along, and then part of it's dropping and moving, but that seems like a large amount, and it's not doing that now. So it's kind of staying along on that level. It's kind of flattened out.
And I think some of it is we're overlapping a little bit some of the questions I asked, and we identified some of the high level, like I said, large bucket expenditures.
I agree.
Yeah, some of them are ongoing, hence
Sure.
it's maintaining that gap, but
And
others
some were
were one time.
Mm-hmm.
That probably really, I think, so there's two different things, but I think these are great questions, and the only thing I would encourage, I'm guilty of this because I kind of framed all this, but I would really kind of urge all of us to take our individual time and efforts to get our questions addressed with with finance
sure,
and
and we can do
staff,
that, I think,
and then
on
have
an individual basis.
have a little bit more of a richer discussion at the next meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just quickly, you were talking about some ongoing maintenance costs or capital improvements that were maybe, I don't know, they were unexpected or whatever that caused part of that leap and that gap. But it seems like with the aging infrastructure, it's something that we can anticipate year after year, that we're going to have those higher levels of maintenance costs.
So the approach through the budget process in the last 5 years has been to address highest risk deferred maintenance. So it doesn't mean that we ignore all the issues that are throughout our city properties and present a risk and have the potential for a slip, trip, fall or some other issue. It means that we prioritize projects based on the highest potential risk. So the decision was made, for instance, to address the senior center parking lot because of slip, trip, fall with very large potholes. The bleacher replacement was a function of ending up on the hot list of high-risk attributes in our Joint Powers Insurance Authority assessment. So, we're always kind of in a catch-up, not that we don't recognize the deferred maintenance, but that we don't have the resources, we don't have adequate resources to address all issues and corrections required at the same time, because we have cash flow challenges from that point of view.
As far as this gap goes, it seems like we've had a series of big hits, several years in a row. Is there any hope that that the big hits will stop coming?
I think we can anticipate pension contribution rates to continue to increase. Without a doubt. It's not going to go down, it's going to go up. Our insurance premiums are very likely to also increase. So unfortunately, we don't have control of the court cases that also make their way into local application, but our struggles are very consistent with cities across the state of California.
We're seeing that.
I think we do a pretty remarkable job of holding costs down as much as possible on an annual basis, and the budget process is the time that we really squeeze. What has occurred through the years, though, was a desire to have higher service levels than our revenues really support. So the small growth that we did have is a function of, I would say, primarily water rates increasing and the associated utility user tax increases.
Don't you also
that are a
see that
companion
as
to
a
that.
part of the beef plant, which might increase
Yes.
even more as we move along, which is happening
Possibly.
right now? It'll take a while for that to ramp up.
Right, but right now, our water and sewer rate study is topped out in terms of rate increases. So we'll be at a standstill and we'll only rely on new customers or additional demands will drive
Yes.
increased
Okay,
collections.
all right.
Okay. Unless there's any others, I know we'll have plenty more, so we'll have between now and the next meeting to pursue. I know there'll be more questions, so thank you very much. Any final comments? And if not, we'll move forward from there. Thank you, Rosanna and Tyler.
Thank you.
We'll go to, obviously, we have no informational reports, so we'll go right to item 5, departmental reports, and I believe we'll have Ms. Shirley Bonias for staffing.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member Shirley Bonias, Personnel and Risk Management, on page 28 of your agenda packet, and if I'm not mistaken, the city clerk, thank you, Alma, I found a mistake in it, so I wanted to get that corrected in front of you. We are challenged in the police department with filling 2 dispatcher positions. Candidates next week, we hope. We are down 2 dispatchers. We do have community service officer interviews tomorrow to replace Chella, which is going to be a big task. As you see, we're received notification one of our police commanders will be leaving us, and as of the 12th, we'll have 4 openings on police officers. We did have an accounting assistant start yesterday, and we had a library page start today. So, of course, I'll answer any questions I'm able to.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next up will be Dino Silas, if he's give us a report update on the emergency construction projects.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The update on the sedimentation basin component realignment project is that on November 1st, last November 1st, the contractor informed that he will provide us with the responses from a manufacturer to our comments and provide a schedule. He continues waiting for a response from the other manufacturer, which is Warm Minister Fiberglass, regarding comments that we provided to some components that are launder trough submittals. Maybe we didn't provide much information, but in reality is that the contractor submitted our comments to the different manufacturers, and he's waiting on the response to update the job drawings and be able to finalize that phase and start with the demolition of the sedimentation basin. That's the translation.
Is that just your concerns about materials that were used before that didn't last as long as they should have, or what is the nature of those the comments that you said?
Right. No. Well, the materials were improved since 20 years ago. So the leader in the industry, what they are using, one of those are these polycane materials. This is the best recommendation that we got from the designer and the contractor, so we are not concerned. What I was referring is that there's components on each basin that move the mechanism to drag the sludge and remove it from the sedimentation ponds. That's the purpose of those basins. And the manufacturer submit the job drawings with dimensions. The contractor goes physically to the field to measure the distances between the walls, the heights, and all of that, and then compare with the provided job drawings and make comments that instead of 1 inch is 1.25 inches, let's say, and the manufacturer will adjust the pieces or the parts to the exact dimensions in the field, and they will submit back those drawings, so we will review them and compare and approve. Once they are approved, so they will order the material to bring them to the field. So that's the process to make sure that it will fit exactly to our ponds.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Next item.
Okay, for the next project, the status of the pumps 422 and 423 rehabilitation. On October 31st, the contractor informed that it is expected to bring back to the plant the pump 422 in approximately 4 weeks, which is about the end of November or early December. It took a little bit longer because these changes that they have to do to order the new shaft and the other type of material. They are cutting the impellers to the proper size. Any questions on that?
Any questions?
The other project, which is the temporary traffic signal cabinet installed at Main Street and Cesar Chavez, there's no changes in the last report. Since October 7, the cabinet or the temporary cabinet is working properly. The signalization is working fine, so we're still waiting for the permanent cabinet to arrive to install it. With that, no questions. Thank you much.
No further. Thank you. Thank you for the update. And we're on to item 6, City Council member reports. I'm going to go ahead and refrain again, and I know we're right in the middle and thick of things with cattle call, but I will leave it up to individual council members if they want to give a report, but I will hold my own. Councilmember Hamby.
Same thing, Mr. Mayor. We've all attended a lot of mixers and events and stuff, and I've gotten phone calls and texts from people saying, we need more code enforcement, we need more, parks and rec work, whatever. But the fact is that we're up against some very difficult decisions to make, and I just hope and pray that the community will be understanding and patient of that, where we're at.
Definitely, thank you for that. And what I'd ask at our next meeting, November 17th, and we'll kind of get through some of the festivities now. Certainly, I think that would be an opportunity. Maybe we can also, share whatever events and whatnot. But Councilmember Couchman.
I agree. I'll wait.
Okay.
I've been to a lot of events.
Councilmember Nava?
I'm fine with that also. The only thing I'll share is that since I was the one that I represented the city of Brawley at the grand opening, I'm sorry, George was there too, of the aquatic center and El Centro.
Oh, yeah.
So George and I both represented for Brawley, and I think they were very happy that we were there.
Okay. Very good.
Rosanna was there too.
And
And I was there too.
Yeah, you came later. You were in the river.
I was there. I was in the back.
Yeah.
I was right behind George for a
That's
little bit.
true. Okay.
Brawley was
Anyway,
well
we
represented.
represented.
Brawley was well
Thank you.
represented. No, that's fantastic. And again, I would still encourage. I think it'll still be good in a couple weeks when we get back together. We can mention that again. So, the city manager's report.
Parade chairs are allowed Friday starting at 6 a.m. So we'll be hopefully sending out Nixle text messages. I'm sure you'll be asked when you're out and about, when can those
Did you get that,
chairs
Sam?
be placed?
They were already asking about
It's tradition.
today.
The most
Yes,
important thing
tomorrow. They
about
were asking
capital
about tomorrow.
placement
Today.
of parade chairs.
Thank you, city manager, city attorney.
One thing, the owners at the Brawley Mobile Home Park have filed an ex parte application that'll be heard Thursday to ask the judge for permission to remove all the trailers, if not all, at least the burned up ones. It's a long shot. I'll be there threatening code enforcement action against everybody. So see if that helps.
Very good, thank you. City attorney, city clerk's report. Very good. I appreciate everyone attending this special meeting. We're going to take a brief break and be going into closed session.